Ever feel like drowning in software? Like every single program promises perfect security. But how can you tell if it's true?
Yeah.
Especially with something important, like, say, a bank that uses a bunch of different open source tools. Each one talks about security differently.
Right, you're spot on. That's a huge problem for tons of companies.
It's a nightmare.
And it's exactly what a group of experts from, well, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation's TAG security team, they're tackling this head on.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're talking like cybersecurity heroes here.
Pretty much, yeah. They're trying to bring some sanity to all of this using something called OSCAL, Open Security Controls Assessment Language.
Okay.
So the idea is OSCAL could be like a universal translator, for security and compliance, a way to cut through all the jargon and see if software actually does what it says.
That sounds amazing. But it's not like a perfect solution yet, is it?
Yeah, not quite a silver bullet.
Okay.
And so we're going to dive into their recent meeting where they're really grappling with some of the, the big challenges of making OSCAL work universally.
I'm ready. Let's do it. So we've got their meeting notes. We've got expert insights, like a fly on the wall for a real brainstorming session.
It is. It is.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the main issue, the core issue is this. OSCAL is supposed to standardize how we represent security information, right?
Yeah.
But there's no one agreed upon way to actually use it.
So it's like we have all the ingredients for a cake, but no recipe.
Exactly, yeah. And that's where OSCAL norms come in, which is what they're proposing. These are like, think of them as grammar rules.
Oh, I love that. Opinionated standardization.
Yeah.
You can tell these folks really care about clear communication. So instead of everyone speaking OSCAL with a different accent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
A
that.
shared language, right. Clear guidelines
Oh.
for how OSCAL should be used in different situations.
Which would be huge, I imagine, for anybody who has to evaluate software security, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about open source.
Absolutely. It would be a game changer for developers, for security teams, really anyone who, wants to know if their software is actually secure.
Right. If what they're using is actually secure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to really see why this is important. So how do they make these OSCAL norms a reality?
So their first step is a detailed document. It outlines these proposed norms, and they're calling it, get this, a love letter to NIST.
To NIST. And that's
the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
right, the folks who actually created OSCAL in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. So NIST has a lot of sway over how OSCAL is used.
Right, so getting them on board is critical.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay, I see. And in this love letter, they get into like really specific examples.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
So one thing they talk about is how to exchange security data between different systems using a format called cloud events.
Oh, so making sure all these different systems can actually talk to each other about security in a way that makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
No more security by Morse code.
Exactly, that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Right.
It's one thing to say, we need standards.
Right.
It's another to actually figure out, how do we make it work in the real world?
Right, and it sounds like they're not afraid to get into the weeds.
Not at all, they really aren't.
Okay.
They dive head first into some of even the technical challenges.
Like what?
Well, they talk about how OSCAL itself, while powerful,
Yeah.
can be pretty complex.
That makes sense, yeah.
It's like, you open up a technical document and it's just like this wall of jargon.
Right. Ironic, since OSCAL is supposed to help us escape that.
Exactly, exactly. So while it's great for all the detail, making it easy to actually for a machine to read, to automate, that's a whole other challenge.
Right, because we live in a world of automation now.
Exactly. And especially since it relies on things like JSON and XML.
Okay, and for those of us who aren't, fluent in geek,
Yeah.
explain what that means.
So JSON and XML, they're great for certain things, but they can be a little bit like, those some assembly required furniture instructions. You get all the pieces.
Right.
But putting it together can be a real pain.
Right, are they saying get rid of them completely? Start over?
Not quite. They see the value, but they really emphasize compact representation
Okay.
and simplified structures, making OSCAL something that machines can easily understand.
So finding that balance. Detailed enough for the experts, but streamlined for the machines to actually use it.
Yes, exactly. They even talk about standardizing the data elements within those formats,
Okay.
which would not only make it more machine-friendly, but also help different tools and systems communicate better.
So it's like a universal adapter for security information.
Exactly.
That's thinking big, but, talk is cheap. Are these folks actually doing something about this?
That's what's so cool about this group. They're all about practical solutions.
Okay, good. I like that. Tell me more.
They keep saying experimentation, getting your hands dirty, figuring out what actually works.
So less talk, more action. Love it.
Exactly. They even mention specific open source tools like Archivist and Witness to test out these different ways of exchanging OSCAL data.
Okay, so they're putting their money where their mouth is.
They are.
That's great. This is way more than just like a theoretical discussion.
It really is.
This is about real change in cybersecurity, which is exciting. But let's be real, not all of us are going to be, knee-deep in OSCAL every day.
Right.
So for someone listening out there, why should they care about any of this?
Because this work could drastically improve how secure open source software is for everyone.
Okay, paint a picture for me. What does that ideal future look like if these OSCAL norms actually work?
Imagine checking software security as easily as glancing at a standardized report.
Okay.
Clear, concise, easy to understand. Doesn't matter who made the software, what tools they use.
No more deciphering, no more guesswork.
Exactly. Just clear, actionable information.
That's the dream.
That is the dream.
Right.
And while it's early days, their dedication, this group's dedication, their practical approach, it gives me hope that that dream is possible.
I'm with you. I've got to say, this deep dive has really opened my eyes, even though I'm not, fluent in OSCAL quite yet.
Right.
But it sounds like we're just scratching the surface.
We are. In the next part, we're going to really zoom in on the specific use cases they're focusing on to standardize OSCAL.
Right.
And what that means for the future of, software security.
Can't wait to dig deeper. Don't go anywhere, folks. This OSCAL adventure is just getting started. Last time, we were talking about these security folks trying to, bring OSCAL down to earth.
Right.
They were sort of like compact representations, simplified structures.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, sometimes the hardest thing is making the complicated stuff simple,
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And this group gets that. In fact, a lot of their meeting is about, very specific situations where standardized OSCAL would really shine.
Okay, so less about the dictionary, more about how we actually use it in real life.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
One thing that keeps coming up is this idea of multi-party collaboration.
Okay.
Which is basically how different groups involved in, building and securing software, how they can use OSCAL to actually talk to each other.
So like developers, security people, even the people using the software in the end.
Exactly. And right now, without clear guidelines, it's like that game, Telephone, where you whisper something around a circle.
Right.
Things get lost along the way.
It never ends well.
No. Security headaches galore.
Yeah, that's not good. So are these OSCAL norms going to be like a one-size-fits-all solution for everything?
That's the interesting part. Not really. They're aiming for, remember, opinionated standardization.
Right.
So instead of one giant rigid template, it's more about, okay, here are the best practices for how to use OSCAL in specific situations.
So it's less about dictating and more about like providing a framework that people can adapt, right?
Yeah. And one of the biggest situations they talk about is security reviews for projects specifically within the Cloud Native Computing Foundation.
The CNCF?
Yeah, the CNCF. And this is important because...
Why is it so important?
Well, the CNCF, they host a ton of massively important open source projects, like the kind of stuff that, powers huge chunks of the internet. Right?
Okay, so we're talking about like the foundation of the internet here.
Exactly. This is serious stuff. And the group knows this. They even mention how, NIST, while they've done great work with OSCAL, at first they focus more on digitizing existing security information rather than making that information easily machine readable.
Hold on. Go back for a second.
Yeah.
Explain that to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
Because digitizing machine readable, those sound kind of similar.
You're right. They are. So think of it this way. You have a recipe, right?
Yeah.
Handwritten on a beautiful scroll.
Okay.
Digitizing it is like taking a super high-resolution picture of that scroll. So you preserve the information, but a computer can't actually, read it and understand it, right?
Okay, I get it.
So machine-readable would be like transcribing that recipe into a format that a computer gets.
Got it. Okay.
So it's not just, a picture. It's actual structured data that can be used,
So it's useful, not just, there.
Exactly. And that's what this group wants for OSCAL. They want it to be a dynamic tool, not just a snapshot.
Right. Especially with all the automation we rely on these days.
Absolutely. And it's not even just about that. It's about making sure that different tools, different systems can all exchange this OSCAL data smoothly.
Because right now it's like trying to I don't know, fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, sometimes.
Mhm.
But this group is really exploring ways to make those connections, like smoother, standardized.
Okay, so OSCAL becomes the universal language, not just like everyone's own dialect.
Exactly.
But after they send this love letter to NIST, what happens? It's not just pen pals, right?
Right, right. And they know this is just the first step. It's a long road ahead. Honestly, even they say, the path isn't totally clear yet.
Which, I mean, makes sense given how complex this all is.
Right.
But like, what's the overall plan?
They're all about experimentation.
Okay, like let's break it to see how it works.
Exactly. They want to test things out, see what sticks.
Less theory, more doing.
Exactly. They even talk about using specific open source tools like Archivist and Witness to try different ways of exchanging OSCAL data.
Okay, so they're not just talking, they're actually going to try this stuff out.
Exactly. They're rolling up their sleeves.
I like it. This is good. But, we've talked a lot about data and machines.
Yeah, it is technical, yeah.
It is technical.
But it all comes from wanting things to be clearer, simpler.
Right, right.
Because security shouldn't be this hidden, complicated
That
thing.
affects everybody.
Exactly, and that's what makes their work so cool. Taking something as complex as cybersecurity and saying, how do we make this make sense for everyone?
I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious, this is all about how to do it. The standardization, the data.
Right.
It feels very how, but what about the why?
Well, we talked about those concrete examples, right? Like
Yeah.
multi-party collaboration, CNCF security reviews.
Right.
That's the why, and that why, that leads to a much bigger conversation.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What's the bigger conversation?
It's about how this group, what they're doing, if they pull it off, it could change everything.
Wow.
Not just open source software, but all of cybersecurity.
Okay, so this is high-stakes stuff.
High stakes. This isn't just about making things easier. It's about fundamentally changing how we approach security.
Wow, okay. So we've talked about how, we've talked about why, but it sounds like the implications of all of this are massive.
Huge.
And that's something we need to unpack a bit more.
We do. We do. In the last part of our deep dive, we're going to really explore that. How standardized OSCAL could, rewrite the rules for security in a digital world.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention. I'm ready for part 3 after this. All right, so we're back, and we've been digging deep into this whole OSCAL thing. But before we go any further, remind me, what's the big takeaway here? Why should anyone listening care about OSCAL being standardized?
It really comes down to trust. Right now, figuring out if software is secure is wandering around in the dark. You're relying on a jumble of reports and certifications.
And hoping for the best.
Exactly. But imagine, what if all that security information was crystal clear, consistent, easy to understand, no matter who made the software or what tools they used?
That's right.
That's the promise of OSCAL, of standardized OSCAL.
So less buyer beware and more, hey, we're open about everything.
Yes, and that's huge, not just for the people building the software, but for everyone who uses it.
Because at the end of the day, we all just want to know that, our stuff is safe.
Exactly, that our data, our systems, it's all protected. And standardized OSCAL, it could be a game changer. Because it's not just about having the information, it's about being able to actually use it.
So it's like, even if everyone agreed to speak the same language, if you only have a couple of dictionaries, it's still going to be tough to communicate.
Exactly. You need more than just the language, right? You need the tools, the resources, the whole ecosystem.
Got it.
And that's what's so exciting about what this group is doing. They're building that ecosystem.
So they're creating a shared map, so
Mhm.
everyone's on the same page, security-wise.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And a good map, standardized OSCAL, it opens up a lot of possibilities, right? Imagine security auditors being able to compare data from different companies all in the same format,
Got it.
or developers proving they meet all the requirements without jumping through a million hoops.
So it makes things more efficient, which is huge.
Absolutely. But this isn't, an overnight thing. It's going to take time. It's going to take work, a lot of collaboration.
For sure. But that's where, and maybe this is a weird transition, but that's where you, the listener, you come in.
Oh.
Yeah, because we've been talking about these experts, right?
Right.
But changing how a whole industry thinks, that takes more than just a few people.
It really does.
It takes awareness. It takes people like you demanding better, clearer security.
Yes, exactly.
So even if we're not all, security experts, we can still make a difference.
100%. Learn about OSCAL, ask the companies you work with if they're using it.
Right.
Encourage them to get on board with these standardized approaches.
Because security, it's everyone's responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about, jargon and complicated rules. It's about trust.
Sure.
It's about being open. It's about
Mhm.
making the digital world a safer place for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive here on OSCAL,
Mm-hmm.
remember, even small things can make a big difference. Stay curious, stay informed, and let's all do our part to make the digital world a little bit safer.
Yeah.